With a little over a month left until the presidential election between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, campaigning is in the final stretch.
In a new term as president, we will again build the greatest economy in history, quickly returning to full employment, soaring incomes, and record prosperity.
Trust me with the presidency. I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I will be an ally of the light, not the darkness.
Key issues for many voters include racial inequality and criminal justice reform, as protests continue in many cities, as well as climate change, as natural disasters sweep through the western and southern coasts. Chris Bury, DePaul professor and journalist, has covered politics in America for over 40 years. He says this election is much different.
What's different is the passion on both sides. This is a referendum on President Trump. So Trump supporters are passionate about voting for him, just as Trump opponents are incredibly passionate about getting him out of the White House.
The most important issue for many is COVID-19. The U.S. death toll from the virus is now over 200,000, with many schools and businesses closed, workers unemployed, and no definitive word on when a vaccine will be available. Still, President Trump defends his handling of the virus.
So I think if we didn't do what we did, we would have had millions of people die. We closed up our country. We closed it up very, very quickly, very effectively. We did a job. We learned about this horrible disease, along with the rest of the world, which had to learn about it. And then we opened it up, and now we know the vulnerable. We know who it attacks, who it's so vicious against.
With coronavirus, the campaign trail looks a lot different than it has in the past. This year, the Democratic National Convention was held virtually, with many of the speakers calling in from their homes. Biden said that he would not be holding any rallies while the pandemic continues, instead meeting with voters in smaller groups. President Trump, however, is still holding campaign rallies, despite health concerns. Political participation is a huge part of campus culture for many universities, including DePaul. DePaul College Democrats Vice President Kyle Asta says remote learning is making it more difficult to campaign, but not stopping them.
Right now, we're just focused on getting people ready to vote come November 3rd and getting people, informed about the election, who the candidates are, what they're voting for, mostly for Democrats. When you're tabling on campus, you can reach a bunch of different people who are walking around very easily versus just on a Zoom meeting, which has a set number of people maybe coming in and out, and it's not as big.
DePaul College Republicans did not respond to Good Day DePaul's request for an interview. Even with young people projected to come out in record numbers, Professor Bury warns that it might not make a difference in some states.
Younger people, especially younger people of color, overwhelmingly support Biden. White young people support Biden, but by a much smaller margin. So it's really black and brown young people who support Biden overwhelmingly. You'd think that would be good news for Biden, but here's the caution. In the battleground states that are going to make a difference, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, those states still have a much larger share of old white voters. In fact, young people are leaving those states. So we have to be cautious about thinking that young people are going to turn this around, because in those battle states that matter, it's still mainly old white voters.
So the stakes are incredibly high, with the country's future hinging on the results of this historic election. For Good Day DePaul, I'm Crystal Hellwig.